Hey guys, what's going on? Mike Morelli here with Scott Rowley. We got a killer episode for you today on the Find Meaningful Work podcast. Should you care what other people think of you? We're going to jump into the depths into this one. What's up, bro? Scott, what's up, man?
Yo, what's up? I was actually talking with my buddy on a mountain bike ride this weekend about this exact topic. And he goes, I think I care too much about what other people think about me. I go, bro, I sometimes care about that too. But when I reflect upon it, most people are too worried about their own world, thinking about themselves and what's going on in their mind and their
Yeah.
world to be busy thinking about you.
It's a very important truth to understand first and foremost, as this concept here can just free you a lot from a lot of just internal strife and anxiety and frustration. The reality is most people don't care about you. They're not thinking about you. They're not sitting up at night wondering what you're doing with your business idea, or the fact that you decided to become a life coach, or the fact that you decided to turn your adventure business into a full-time income and you're going to charge people for it. The truth is most people don't care. Most people are thinking about themselves, and it's not selfish. That's just human nature. I mean, all the things that I think about are 99.9% of them I'm thinking about myself. And I know, Scott, that you can say the same about yourself. But I think this is a very important thing just to lead off with, is that, you know, if we can step out of the delusion real quick, like, and just saying to yourself, hey, you're not that much more important than anyone else. Like, people aren't like conserving their time and energy thinking about you. Even someone who's super popular, like let's say Tony Robbins, I'm not ever sitting around thinking about Tony Robbins.
You know, I, Mike, I think there's something that we should bring up here too, though, and that's maybe I don't care what other people think about me, but I care what other people think they think about my business idea or how I present my business idea, because their thoughts are either going to be ones of stoke and they're super excited to be a part of it or supported in some capacity, or complete denial. And I I believe that what we're talking about here today, should I care about what other people think about me, is actually a huge source of self-doubt and uncertainty and fear of failure, because we project out into the world what we think other people think about our ideas and thoughts, etc.
So there's two things that to talk about here. The first is what people are thinking of you, per se, your character of Mike Morelli. What are people thinking about the character of Mike Morelli, right? And in that regard, I don't care, because I realize how humans operate. Everyone is projecting their own insecurities, fears, doubts, etc., onto other people. At one moment, someone who says that they love me could say, oh, Mike, I hate when you do that. You're an X, Y, and Z. You're saying, negative words. Maybe they call me an asshole. And one day later, that person can say, I love you. You're an amazing person. You're such a great friend. You have to realize that when people say things to you, it is a reflection of how they're just feeling about you in one moment. And that moment can change from one thing to the next, from 1 year to the next. Scott, when I became an entrepreneur over the last few years, I've had friends, people that I said, hey, man, we were friends. And now these people no longer talk to me. It's unfortunate, but that's what happens as the seasons change in nature. So do people's internal states and ways of thinking. Now, I wonder what things happened in their life where maybe they feel a certain way now about me. That's okay. That's totally okay, because we have to have an understanding of just how humans operate. And I can be the same way, right? At one moment, Scott, I look at our business relationship. There's been times when, bro, I love you, amazing, da da da. And there's times where me and you maybe butt heads a little bit over an idea or whatever the case may be. Now, I think we have the awareness on both of our ends to be able to center ourselves and realize that, hey, that's just, hey, Scott, sorry, I was, frustrated with you earlier. I was feeling this way and I projected it onto you. Now, we have to just have that fundamental understanding of how humans operate. Don Miguel Ruiz says in the book, The Four Agreements, is don't take anything personally. I mean, that just really is such an eye opener.
Easier said than done, right?
Easier. It's the hardest thing in the world. Don't make assumptions. Don't take anything personally. But again, you can't, what people think of you, like what people think of Mike Morelli, if you live by that, if you genuinely care, you will be such a slave to your emotions and to your thoughts, and you will never find true peace in life, because simply this, people's opinions of you change like the seasons. This morning in Costa Rica, it was pouring rain. Now it's sunny and there's a cool breeze. And most people live their entire life based off of that, of people's feedback and not feedback, of people's opinions of them. And it's such a challenging way to live. And this is why a lot of the time, Scott, we wind up being a people pleaser, because we wind up constantly seeking people's approval and attention and praise. And when you do that, you wind up developing a sense of being inauthentic, because you're willing to act out in ways that are not authentically you, just to get the approval and acceptance and praise of others. It's a very dangerous way to live. Let me jump in real quick, though. Let me jump into the second part of this. What you were mentioning earlier, when it comes to Peak Prosper, I genuinely care. Why? Because this is our sole purpose. We are building Peak Prosper to help thousands upon thousands of adventurous men, to help them find work that's aligned with their sole purpose in life so they can reach their full potential. So when I put out a marketing message, when I put out content, when our clients maybe give us some, say, hey, Mike, Scott, this wasn't great, or can you improve on this? I'm receptive to it. You're receptive to it, because this is feedback. We're realizing that, no, they're not attacking Mike Morelli because the program isn't as good as it could be. I'm just using an example, or, hey, the marketing message is off here, or whatever. No, we're saying this is feedback, and feedback is an essential part of this algorithm that we use to improve not only our business, but our relationships and our life. So there's a key distinction there.
And there's a lot of stuff here, right, to unpack. I genuinely care what my wife thinks about me, for example, which would
Yep.
put me in this bucket of people who care about what other people think of me. But I don't stay stuck in this cycle of thinking what she thinks about me all of the time. I strive to act and treat her from a basis of how I believe she would want to be treated, to think good things, to think loving thoughts, to think that I'm an awesome, badass, adventurous dude.
Mhm.
So rather than staying stuck in what is she thinking about me, I have a tendency to operate more from a state of how would I act? How would I treat these people if I wanted them to think good things about who I am as a person?
Yes. And I just, Scott, tell me, I mean, obviously I don't know the details of your marriage, but when let's say Alex, obviously you say you care about what your wife thinks of you. It's not from a place of insecurity where you're like, oh man, she said this, and now I have to go do this. You guys have a commitment, not necessarily say to Scott Rowley and to Alex, but you guys have a commitment to each other. You've built something. And so when she says something to you, you care about what she thinks, but as feedback, so this marriage that you have can succeed in the same way that we're married on Peak Prosper. So I care what your feedback is. I care what the client's feedback is. I care what our lead people who are interested in Peak, what they think. How can we better impact you? So is there, am I right in that distinction there, or am I still off?
No, you're 100%. I mean, the way that people are responding to us is feedback in terms of what they're thinking already, most likely.
Yeah.
That's an interesting one. I'll just repeat it. The way people are responding to us, whether verbally or physically or emotionally, I mean, you can tune into people's emotional state by just being in their presence, is insight into what they're already thinking about us. What people are often thinking about us is generally a result of how they are perceiving what we're presenting to them, whether we're presenting a marketing message, or a message of loving kindness, or a message of frustration. Their perception of that is rooted in their own reality, and their response to it is often a mirror of what they're thinking, which is kind of a representation of what Mike talks so strongly about, the programming formula. our thoughts create our feelings, create our actions, create our results. And if we look at this formula and almost apply it to what we're talking about here, we can see how other people are acting in response to the thoughts they're thinking about us.
That's spot on. So I believe that we've answered this question of, and again, this is just our opinion, right? I mean, don't take any of this as the gospel, right? There's no such thing as like, oh, this is the absolute 100% truth. But I think with beliefs, they're not right or wrong, true or false. It's just evaluating, are they serving you or not? So someone may listen to this and say, no, that's bullcrap. I genuinely care what people think. That's totally fine. However, you have to evaluate, is that belief serving you? Are you a people pleaser? Are you finding yourself in constant emotional turmoil and frustration based on the words that people say to you? Like, do you feel that when someone gives you a compliment, you get so high and amazing? Oh, yes, I am X, Y, and Z. And then an hour later, someone gives you a negative compliment and you go into a cycle of frustration and self-doubt and low self-esteem. For me, I realized that I used to do that. And now for me, it's just like, people give me a compliment. Hey, that's awesome. I don't allow myself to get so high on it because I realize that it's also just an internal representation of how they're just viewing me in the present moment. Right. So this is, bringing awareness to this can allow you to achieve such a calmer emotional state. And the benefit to that is clear thinking. And as someone, if you want to have a business one day, you want to be an entrepreneur, right? You want to change your work situation into something that you love. You have to be a clear thinker. You have to be able to have emotional balance because there are ups and downs in this cycle of life. The wheel turns.
Well said, Mike. Well said. And I think if somebody's listening to this, they want to deep dive into their mindset and their thoughts and the impact that how they think other people are thinking about them. The first module of our mini course is just brilliant. The natural operating state, helping you really tune into your mental programming and why you think what you think, and helping you to change some of those beliefs that just aren't really serving you. So if that sparks your curiosity, we'll drop a link in the show notes below to the mini course. And Mike, do you have any final comments on this epic topic?
I feel like I could just continue to go off on this topic per se of what people should you care about what people think about you. I just would summarize like when you've got a mission like Peak Prosper, we're on a mission, and we care about what people's feedback is to support the mission. But in terms of who Mike Morelli is as a person, which is really just a character after all, I can't say that I'm 100% there, right? Because it's a work in progress, but just total detachment from the words that people say to you is a superpower, and learning not to take things personally, because in the end, you have to understand that it doesn't really matter anyways.
I love it, man.
So, Scott, I love recording this podcast with you. And sometimes you just let me go, dude. Sometimes you just let me go. I appreciate that.
Epic, man. Well, we'll see you guys in the next episode. And that's a wrap for this.
Cheers, guys. Mini course will be in the show notes below. We'll see you in the next episode.